Hold on, you want to connect the...
2, 1, go.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Wholesale Sharks podcast here in the Dispo Sharks studio. My name is Annette. Gosh, it's honestly been a while since I've done an episode, but I couldn't think of a better time to get back on set and bring in an incredible guest. Today, I have Luke, and the reason why I had brought him in was because we had a brief conversation. But what really caught my attention is that he is absolutely killing it on social media. He's super out there talking about real estate. He is a local. But what is really impressive is that he is killing and doing 6 figures a month in assignment fees in Arizona, which is pretty impressive.
Thank you.
So please welcome to the set, Luke Careccia. He is the founder of the Thrive Real Estate Team.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, Luke. Yeah, welcome. I know we were talking a little bit off set, but I would love to give you this time to kind of tell our audience what you're doing in the industry, because I know you're killing it as a wholesaler and in traditional.
Yeah, so we started the Thrive Real Estate Team a little bit over about a year ago, and started off just being a traditional real estate agent, and then made that transition to being a full-time investor. So really started building out our acquisitions department. That's really where our heavy focus is right now, is finding off-market deals that we can wholesale.
Yeah.
And then kind of cherry picking the best ones, right, to keep and fix and flip those, and then add those into our rental portfolio. So it's been great. I think this year's been a little bit weird.
Yeah, we were just saying that, how it's been a little odd.
It has. And, when you go back to last year, really about this time, I think an industry, and I think as a lot of wholesalers felt like we definitely kind of got hit. What was it when, I think it was June of last year when the Fed started raising rates and stuff.
Yeah. And it was kind of it was so weird because it was kind of sudden, and then it was just dry.
Yeah.
And then everybody's talking to everybody, trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And then, we pretty much just had to pivot, and then try to figure out, how we could collaborate or think of different strategies to keep the business alive.
And we were in the same boat. I think we had 5 or 6 deals that we lost earnest on, that we were hard. Yeah. So it kind of hit us, and it was a good reality check, though, I think, really for me, and understanding that, it's not all going to be rainbows and sunshines, we're going to have these periods in time where, buyers may dry up, or maybe we're just off from the acquisition to what actual end buyers are paying. And we basically did a pivot, similar to you guys. So we pivoted on the acquisition side. We really started getting involved with folks like yourself, other dispo teams, and buyers, really trying to figure out, hey, where are you guys a buyer at? And sometimes it was a great deal on paper, but they just were like, hey, we're not buying. It's so crazy.
It's so funny that you say that. And that's actually a model that we live by, is what is the numbers that the buyers are actually picking up at? Because we could do comps and that all day long, but if that's not what they're buying, then we're never going to make a deal.
Yeah.
So it's I guess understanding that concept and really putting that forward within the team is really what has kept us going in this weird market.
Yeah, and even on that, I know our acquisitions team, they're paid 100% commission, right?
Nice.
Like a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
And when buyers dry up, right, when deals kind of start becoming a little bit more scattered, I was coming out of pocket just to make sure my guys were taken care of.
Wow.
And that's one thing as an industry, I feel like too, to stay here long term and to really build those solid relationships. One motto we always say is people over profits, right?
Yeah.
So even if it's not maybe the most profitable thing, as long as we take care of our people on our team, right? Even especially when we're in a downturn or we're in a bad market, and they know, hey, Luke's going to make sure we're taken care of, and the Thrive Real Estate Team is going to be here to stay, then I think that's really what's most important. And as you know, I'm sure some folks, just couldn't make it, and unfortunately they're out of the business. But I think a lot of that's going to come back too. A lot of people are going to probably re-enter the market.
No, and I totally agree, and I think that's really, really great of you to have that type of mindset, because that's what I feel really creates a solid team. So that's really impressive. But no, I agree with what you said as well, because I feel like what goes up must come down. So it's the market's just constantly shifting, and there's always going to be change, right?
Yeah.
So, Luke, I would love to talk a little bit about what you were doing before real estate, because I know you've been only doing it for 2 years.
Well, I've been licensed since 2020.
Okay, so 3 years now.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were you kind of doing before the whole real estate thing?
Yeah, so before real estate, I got into sales when I was 18. I worked at Red Now Power Sports in Chandler, like the big dealership over there off the 202 in Cooper, selling motorcycles and
Wow.
side-by-sides and stuff. So got into that when I was 18, and then from there I made the transition into door-to-door sales.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my fiance traveled the country actually selling door-to-door. So I did satellite TV, believe it or not, door-to-door.
Oh my gosh, that's rough.
Which
You're like
was
roasting outside.
Yes, really rough. And no one watches TV anymore or like pays for, channels.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a pretty interesting 2 years that I did. Doing that, traveling the country. My fiance, she was, came with me and traveled all around too. So it was kind of cool. We're really passionate about traveling and kind of getting out of Arizona and seeing the country and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it was fun while it lasted, but the industry I just felt like maybe wasn't the best. I know a lot of my buddies transitioned into selling solar.
Yeah. I
which
know that's still kind of a big thing.
it is, yeah. So I know, and they're killing it in solar right now, doing door to door. So yeah, I made that transition from the dealership to door, and then from the door to door industry, I always knew I wanted to get into real estate. That's when I was like, hey, I just, I forgot where I was. I think I was in Oregon or Indiana or somewhere, and I flew home. I was like, hey, I'm gonna jump into real estate full time. I saved some money, so I had a little bit of a reserve, and just jumped into real estate full time. Never looked back.
But what exactly was it that kind of inspired you to jump into that new career? Because I mean, yeah, sales go hand in hand with real estate, but why real estate specifically?
I always wanted to be an investor.
Okay.
It sounds weird. Like, I always just wanted to be the, I don't know if it was like the guy on HGTV, like the guy running around doing flips and stuff. I always just wanted to do that. And I always had like, buddies, like one of my buddies, his dad was in real estate. And I think maybe he kind of inspired me to jump into it as well. I saw kind of the lifestyle that they lived and the freedom and the flexibility and kind of the stuff that real estate does provide, later on. But I got into it, realizing that, hey, I'm probably going to go 6 months without receiving a paycheck, right? That was just kind of my mindset getting in.
That's good to like preface yourself before, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like a lot of people do jump into this industry thinking like they're gonna make millions right away, and then they're like, oh shit, I'm broke for like 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I did, and that was all that advice of my buddy's dad, just saying, hey, get into it. Don't be one of the guys like you said, right, that is going to jump in and thinking they're going to make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
But just get into the ground level, learn it right, do it right, and then it's a people business, right? So it's a relationship business, and just been focused on that, building relationships, and doing deals. So I've never looked back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with knowing that you've always wanted to be an investor, what made you want to get your license initially before just doing like investing stuff before?
So I didn't really have a clear path. I think
Okay.
maybe I didn't understand wholesaling.
Yeah.
I saw like Max Maxwell, and I saw Jerry Norton and all the big YouTube wholesalers.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know, I just didn't maybe feel right jumping into that right away. So I got my license. I started doing like the traditional real estate stuff and had some success in that, was crushing it. And then really from there, I started really realizing like, wait a minute. Actually, I did a deal. I listed a property in Phoenix on Victor Hugo, and a wholesaler actually bought it. And I saw the settlement sheet when we closed, and I made like, I don't know, 2.5% on it, and they made like 30 grand or something. I'm like, what? I didn't even understand. I'm like, what is this on the assignment fee to this some random company? I'm like, 30, who made 30 grand? And I was like all confused, right? Just like a green pea traditional agent.
Hold on, but just to get a timeline, when was this? Like a year ago, 2 years ago?
So this would have been in 2021.
So then you're barely kind of getting the understanding of like, whoa, what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, and that's really when it was a game changer for me, because I'm like, wait, so these guys just made 30 grand and they didn't represent the seller, they didn't represent the buyer. Like, what did they do?
They got no responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. And then from there, I realized like, okay, maybe I should pivot and start doing more of those. So then I started doing, an assignment here or an assignment there. And then just, within the last year and a half, I've really started taking it serious with the team, building out, all the systems and processes that you need to be successful.
Yeah. And so when you were an agent, you were just doing those leads by yourself. Is that when you started building your team? kind of going more on the investing side?
Yeah, so I was doing I've built my entire business on cold calling. So I
Nice.
cold called cancel expireds a lot, and that's how I got like the traditional business. And then that kind of was like a perfect segue into going into cold calling real estate agents,
Yeah.
which is something that we do a ton. So like we reach out to real estate agents. We say, hey, local investors here in Phoenix, looking for a property, and we have a whole script and stuff that we run them through, and then from there we just build a database and go from there.
Nice. So do
Yeah.
you think having your license has actually helped you more, going more so on the investing side?
I always go back and forth on that.
And I love to ask people
Yeah.
on the podcast too, because I get people that are just strictly wholesalers, and then I get people that are agents, and then that are dual. And I always love to hear, like, a lot of the people that are just strictly wholesale, they're like, no, like, I don't want a license. It's too much responsibilities. There's a lot of fiduciary legalities, right? But so I'd love to hear your take on it, if it's actually beneficial, if you think that having it or would like and encourage people to have it.
Yeah, so one thing not a lot of people know is that I actually dropped my license for a year.
Oh,
Yeah. So I got my license, and then thinking in that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
to speak on that, like, I think there's pros and cons, right? Like with anything in life, I think having it taught me a lot early on. I really understand like AAR contracts. I know how to talk to realtors. I know how to
Yeah.
get in their head. I know what questions they're going to ask. I know what their concerns are typically. So I feel like it helped on that end. Did it help necessarily getting deals and making money? I don't think so.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then really to take that further, so I dropped my license, right? So like from really the past 6-7 months, I didn't have a real estate license.
Wow.
And strictly just thinking, hey, let me drop my license. My fiance Katrina, she handles all of our retail clients, so it's not
Yeah.
like I had anything to really miss out on that side. And I could just focus on wholesaling. But what I learned without having my license is like when that traditional, property comes up, or if I'm actually out meeting with a seller and I want to have that conversation of like, hey, this is where we're at cash, but hey, if you need to get it on the market, right, we can go that route. I think there is some benefits if you are going direct to seller. I think sometimes there is a benefit of having it because then you're able to represent them and really show them, hey, these are your two options, right? Or here are your few options,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really helped me just get more listings too on that side, just by being able to offer them both.
So it's almost as if like you have double the tools to utilize in a situation. You don't have just one option.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean that seems ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I know a lot of wholesalers, they're like, dude, you're crazy. I would never get a license because they're like, we're going to do a novation or we're going to do this or that.
Yeah.
So there is tons of tools out there too. And having a license, I don't think is for everyone. I meet some wholesalers that are like, I would never get a license and these are my reasons. I'm like, hey, more power to you. Stay unlicensed and keep doing it the way you're doing.
Yeah.
And then some, it does make sense. So I think it just really depends on the person. And it really, I think too, it depends on what your long-term plan is. Like my
Right.
long-term plan is to have kind of both sides of the business. So like right now we're heavily on the wholesale side. I do have a retail team as well. So I have 2 agents right now that just strictly do retail. They don't do any wholesaling. So if they were to come across, let's say, a seller that needs to get, a quick cash offer, right, they're going to refer that basically to my wholesale department.
Yeah, just kind of transfer.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of kicking stuff back and forth.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really incredible that you're taking advantage and seeing the opportunities because, again, like we just said, there's a lot of people in the industry that kind of only see one way, and they're almost missing out on or, like, leaving money on the table, like not being resourceful and, like, making it work for the seller.
Yeah.
But incredible. Awesome. So what do you think sets your team apart from a very competitive industry here in Arizona? Because Phoenix itself has some of the top biggest investors, super saturated, a lot of people going on. It also makes it kind of like a small market. We all really know each other. But what is making your team stand out and continuing to grow?
I think it all boils down to relationships.
I agree.
I think, we talked off air about putting people over profits.
And I love that saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've done that a lot. I know we had also discussed not counting the pockets of others. I think that's huge as well. Like, if we can pass a deal around, you guys can make money on it, we can make money on it.
Yeah.
Typically that solidifies that relationship, makes that relationship more sticky, where we're more likely to do business with those people versus someone that maybe is, money changes people. Money kind of makes people think differently when they see that settlement sheet and they're like, wait, well, you guys made X and we made Y, and it kind of creates that little bit of friction.
Yeah.
And we try to avoid that at all costs. So we just take that to heart. We really try to, when we send deals out we want people to know, like, hey, there's money to be made on this. We should jump on it.
Yeah.
Which therefore, helps kind of our deals stand by themselves, especially in a busy market like Phoenix, where there's a ton of wholesalers.
There's a ton.
And I'm sure Annette, being primarily on the dispo side, it sounds like a lot of the deals sent to you, how many of those are really deals?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, it's because you have to, the way I see it, and I see it all the time, is it goes to so many people that they're just tacking on their fee, right? And so it kind of just ends up like retail price by the time it sometimes gets to me. And I'm like, oh, shit, this is not a wholesale deal. This might as well get listed.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to send it to Luke.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing I've noticed a lot about that is, like, the real end buyers typically, like, they go to the direct. Like, so
Right.
I can't tell you how many times, like, where we've sent a deal out, maybe there's 2 wholesalers that make a spread on it.
Yeah.
Once it closes, though, and they see the settlement sheet, the end buyer calls us and says, hey, we noticed you guys were the contract holders on this. We paid XYZ company this and this company that. Why don't add us to your buyers list,
Yeah.
right? So we've seen that a lot, and we're always transparent too, especially with the dispo folks we do work with, or the wholesalers, just so, because we never want to cut people out of it, right? And I understand building a buyers list takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
a lot of energy to do. So that's one thing we always are definitely transparent on. But that's one thing I've noticed more and more. So if you are a wholesaler out there and you're like, man, I need more buyers, just get those deals and make sure those deals are actually deals, and
Yeah.
trust me, the buyers will come.
Yeah, I feel like that goes hand in hand. Is like there's a bunch of deals out there, but it's about finding like really good buyers and people that you could trust. So next question, and I'd love to hear about it. So building a business, you're still fairly new, and building your team, and you have these visions of building this team. You mentioned you have a fiance, so congratulations.
Thank you.
How are you balancing your personal, building a business, your relationship? How are you kind of making that all work in this crazy industry?
It's a great question, and I think my mindset on that changes pretty frequently, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, just because I've been reading a ton, I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts. My
Nice.
morning routine, afternoon, like I have a lot of routines in place, and I feel like that definitely helps. But one thing, kind of my new mindset really on it is, I don't really believe in. It depends on the business you're building, but I think personally for me, I don't believe in balance. Like, I think that it's more of a pendulum. So I think you can swing that pendulum more towards business at certain points in your life, and then swing it back to personal.
Yeah.
And for what we're doing, I know me and my fiance, we always talk, and there's late nights. Luckily, we both work on the business too. So
You're like a team.
Yeah, exactly. So we spend a lot of time together. We're working a lot together, but then also like being able to set work aside and just have our time. I think is something that we've done a good job at protecting. But to answer your question, I don't think there is like a perfect,
Harmonious.
harmonious
Yeah.
like balance, right? Of
Yeah.
a perfect balanced life. And I'm sure there's people out there that may have that. I've just never had that personally.
Yeah.
So I try to swing it back and forth, and like we're taking a trip, so we'll like go on a week-long travel, and we'll go do stuff like that, or do staycations we do all the time just here locally in Phoenix.
So easy to do that here because there's so much going on.
I know.
And then they're building a whole bunch of stuff. They're building like a $1 billion resort here on the west side too. It's crazy.
I know, I've heard about it. And the west side has exploded, I feel like, out here. I'm an Arizona native, so like before the 303 was here, and like I remember being a kid running around and coming out to the west side, and there was not a lot of stuff out
Just
here.
dirt?
Yeah, just dirt. Yeah, in the Cardinal Stadium. That was
gosh.
it.
What area did you grow up in?
So I grew up in, we bounced around the valley. We lived in Mesa, we lived in Scottsdale, we lived in Phoenix, we lived in Maricopa. We've pretty much bounced around.
Nice, love it. So last question, and this is definitely my favorite one to always ask my guests. What advice would you give to the audience that are viewing today? A lot of them that view the podcast are inspiring investors, inspiring wholesalers. Some of them do want to get their license. what advice would you give to them that is on the journey to obtain whatever their goal is?
I think it just build relationships, get out there and network and lead with value and build valuable relationships. So I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give wholesalers is when you approach someone in a relationship, make sure that you're leading into that relationship with value.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is like especially if you're a newer wholesaler and you come and meet Annette, right, or another person out there doing deals, just make sure you're not going there and asking for something without giving first.
Yeah.
So, and it comes down to a really good book. I would recommend everyone read it. It's called Jab, Jab, Right Hook. And
Nice.
it's really all about, the jabs, the two jabs, right, are all value, and then go in for the ask. So, and that really is going to set you apart from a lot of people, right, that are coming after, a lot of the different wholesalers here trying to learn or trying to get out there and do your first deal. So, come to them and say, hey, I'm willing to make X amount of calls for you. Hey, I'm willing to do this. I'm really, willing to put in the work first without anything in return, and then go in for that ask. So that would be probably the best piece of advice that I could give you getting into wholesaling, and really building something meaningful and hopefully lasting.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredible, and I honestly couldn't agree more because I feel like it's almost like a no-brainer, but sometimes, like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of people get excited about the industry, but there definitely is like a strategic way to do it. And, building the relationship has definitely been key on my end too, in building some or whatever sort of success here.
Yeah.
In wholesale or just within real estate itself. But.
Yeah, and I've followed your page. I've followed Ramon and Dispo Sharks, and you guys are crushing it too. So I really,
thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys, connecting, and I've definitely kind of looked and saw what you guys are doing. I know we did that deal together, and that's kind of where our conversation started, and it's been awesome to connect because I've kind of seen your guys' name and seen you guys out there in the marketplace, just never actually connected on a deal. So
it's always funny too because I think in wholesale it happens a lot where you'll be communicating with somebody and you'll never meet them in person.
Yeah.
And then when you do, you're like, okay, cool. Like this guy's actually he's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But well, thank you so much, Luke, for joining us on today's episode. I did tag Luke's IG in the screen, so make sure to give him a follow. I will praise him on his content is great, so definitely go check it out, go give him a follow, and thank you guys so much for another episode on Wholesale Shark. See you again next time.
Thank you guys.